Aloha, it's Robert Stellick with Blue Planet Surf. Today's video is about the terms paddleboarding versus stand-up paddleboarding. What you see me doing here right now is called stand-up paddleboarding. What my friend Jeff is doing is called paddleboarding. Now this year with the global pandemic in September 2020, we've seen a huge increase in stand-up paddle participation. A lot of people getting into this sport, which is awesome. But we also find that a lot of people are confused about the terms stand-up paddleboarding versus paddleboarding. So I just wanted to make a little video explaining the difference between the two terms. Of course, I find it easy to understand why people get confused. Most places outside of Hawaii or California, Australia, and a few other pockets don't really know much about paddleboarding. And if you go on Google or you search on YouTube, what you get is pictures of stand-up paddlers or a video, including this one, how to stand up paddle in 5 minutes. I'm going to link to that up above. It's a really good introduction to stand-up paddleboarding if you're interested in that. If you click on the Wikipedia definition of paddleboarding, you'll actually get a picture of a stand-up paddler. But if you actually read the definition on Wikipedia, it's correct. It says, paddleboarding participants are propelled by a swimming motion using their arms while lying or kneeling on a paddleboard or surfboard in the ocean. This article refers to traditional prone or kneeling paddleboarding. A derivative of paddleboarding is stand-up paddleboarding, also called stand-up paddle surfing. Paddleboarding is usually performed in the open ocean with the participant paddling and surfing unbroken swells to cross between islands or journey from one coastal area to another. So paddleboarding has actually been around a lot longer than stand-up paddling. Prone paddlers here on Oahu, especially on the North Shore, they go prone paddleboard to stay in shape during the summer when there's no waves, for the big waves in the winter. So big wave surfers in the summer, they get on their paddleboards to train for the winter and stay in shape. The biggest race in paddleboarding and in stand-up paddling is the Molokai to Oahu race, which started in 1997 as a prone paddleboard race, and not until about 10 years later was the first stand-up paddler in that race. It's still the paddleboard world championships, but there's a distinction between paddleboarders and stand-up paddleboarders. It's easy to understand why people get confused about the term. You know, you have a board and a paddle, so paddleboarding kind of seems to make sense. So what is paddleboarding? It's a sport where you lay on your board, either lay prone on your stomach or kneeling on your knees, and you use your arms to paddle. So you propel yourself with your arms, you don't have a paddle. So that's paddleboarding. Usually the boards are about 12 feet long, that's a stock division. People also use unlimited boards with rudders, but they're usually very rounded on the bottom, very tippy, narrow boards, but fast. They usually have a teardrop shape, the stock boards, rounded nose, pintail, and a rounded bottom make them very quick through the water, but they're also quite tippy. So unless you have a low center of gravity laying down or kneeling, it's going to be almost impossible to balance if you try to stand up on a prone paddleboard. So unfortunately now it seems that paddleboarding is understood to be stand-up paddleboarding, and if you want to get results for prone paddleboarding, you actually have to search for prone paddleboarding. So try to use the correct term so people don't get confused about it. I don't know, it's probably too late to change what's happening on Google and YouTube, but if you work at Google and you can have influence on that, maybe make that change and only show results for paddleboarding if somebody searches for paddleboarding, because that's the correct term, and stand-up paddleboarding is a different sport. I hope you enjoyed this video about paddleboarding versus stand-up paddleboarding. If you enjoyed it, please give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel down below. We come out with new water sports videos every Saturday morning. So check us out and get the notifications. Thanks for watching. See you on the water. Aloha.